Ubuntu. Ubuntu. It's a Zulu proverb. I promise you it's not a curse word in any language. I share it with you because I learned this proverb, and I'll tell you what it means if you don't already know. I'll share it in just a moment. I share it with you because it has so much application to what we're talking about today. I started using it, and now it's a foundation of all the work that I do, because I've been doing work in the space of diversity and inclusion for 25 years and unconscious bias for about the last 5. And still in 2018, a lot of people still say to me, so what is diversity and why should I care? And when I learned what the word Ubuntu meant on one of my trips to South Africa, I thought, I finally have a definition. It really wraps it all together. Ubuntu means I am because we are. We are because I am. And when you think about it, diversity plus inclusion is exactly that. When we have an environment that is inclusive and respectful, it takes all of us to do what we do well. I can do what I do better when I value and respect who you are, and vice versa. So whether you're talking about the clinicians or whether you're talking about the patients, or in my case, since I'm one of the very few people in the room who's not a medical practitioner in any way, I still feel that I'm with my tribe right now. Because I know I do this work because I was called to do it. And I know you do your work because you were called to do it. It's too hard. You wouldn't do it just for external kind of reasons. So Ubuntu so much applies to what we do. Well, one of the things that I always ask my audiences when I have longer time is to actually talk to people sitting next to them about this question. Why is it hard or uncomfortable or scary to talk about this thing called diversity, inclusion, or bias? Now, we don't have time for you to answer it right now, but I pretty much know most of the answers you would give. They would be things that look like this, right? Some variation of those things. And we talked about it, or it was brought up this morning, that we have a culture of silence. I love that term because that's really what it's about. We're afraid to talk about diversity, inclusion, and bias because we're afraid we're going to be judged. We're afraid we're going to say the wrong thing. We don't know the right thing to say, and so we say nothing. And you know what that does. When we say nothing, we push it down further, and that causes us to be more depressed or more excluded. Well, when you put together all the various answers you could come up with for that question, and frankly, all that we've been talking about all day, is the fact of the matter is we all want to belong. And what researchers are finding is that Maslow was almost right. I'm not going to ask you to tell me all five or six parts of the hierarchy. But he had said that belonging was number 3. And what some researchers are finding now is that belonging is number 1. It is the most basic human need. So there's certain things that we do, especially in the workplace, that we unconsciously cause people to feel excluded. We cause them to not feel as though they belong. And so I so appreciated the personal stories that people shared this morning. When we get up in the morning and when we go to work or wherever it is we're going, we see the world through our own lens. And because we're in a hurry and we're multitasking and we've convinced ourselves that we can multitask, which many of you know we really can't do that. However, we've convinced ourselves that we can, and so we assume everybody sees the world the way we do. And therein lies the problem. Because we've been bombarded with so much information from the moment we were born that we have a lot of implicit biases or unconscious biases. And because they're unconscious, we don't know we're doing it, and that can cause some friction, some separation, some unintended exclusion in the workplace among some people. Now, from a healthcare perspective, you know the gaps that exist from the patient care perspective. And many of those things exist not because the physicians and the other healthcare providers are racist, sexist, homophobic, or any of those other big words that we use when we think of bias. It happens because they made some assumptions that maybe weren't true, like some of the examples that you heard this morning. And oftentimes they think they're doing it for the right reasons. So what I want to share with you in the little time I have is some of the biases that creep into our workplace, into our lives, that have nothing to do with the medical profession. But nevertheless, they impact us as we work every day. So that meaning it doesn't have to do with a prescription or a particular diagnosis, but rather how we work. So there are about 14.8% of men in the U.S. who are 6 feet tall. Only 14.8%. But when it comes to CEOs, presidents, generals, and admirals, it's 60%. 60. Well, is it because they're just smarter? Now, I know they want to believe that, but no, it's because they happen to have an advantage that other people didn't have. Teachers see them first, and so they call on tall boys first, etc. What researchers have found out is they could put a monetary measure to this. Tall men make more money than short men do. Now, tall women have an advantage too until they get into the workplace and they're the only one that is at their level, the only female at their level. Then the gender bias switches places. So we tend to think tall men have the right answers. I'm not saying they don't. However, we're overlooking shorter people who might have great answers. Then another bias that I know all of us have experienced no matter where it is we were born in the world, and by the way, all three of these that I'll share with you are international research, although I'll give you American or US, North American examples. So we have bias around accents. Now, I was born and grew up in New Jersey, and I live in Greensboro, North Carolina. So when I first met, thank you very much, right, Chapel Hill, I know, right over there, right? So, but when I first moved to Greensboro, some of the folks that I would interact with would say, "Oh, you're a Yankee. Bless your heart." I quickly learned that bless your heart is not necessarily a good thing. So the point, though, is we have all kinds of biases about accents, and so what the research tells us is the more your accent is different from mine, the less likely I will believe you to be trustworthy. The less likely I will believe you to know, believe that you know what you're talking about. Of course, except for one accent. So if you have a British accent, people think you know what you're talking about. So accents get in the way because our brains are lazy. That doesn't want to work hard enough to understand it. And then, of course, we know that there are biases as they relate to names. And in one of my sessions, I had a doctor who was responsible for being on the team to bring new residents, to choose who would be the residents at their hospital. And he fessed up on the first day, it happened to be a 2-day session, and he fessed up on the first day that, oh no, there's no way I'm gonna hire anybody with an ethnic name. And he didn't say ethnic, because he was specifically talking about African American. And he was a black man, but not from the US. It was the second day when he realized he was code switching. Second day that he realized why he was doing all of that. So we know that we have those issues. I'm gonna ask you to do something real quick. Shake the hand of the person sitting next to you. And so I would imagine that whether you were born in North America or not, you know that you're supposed to give a firm handshake, give direct eye contact, and if you had time, you would stand up, right? Now, shake their hand again, but this time give a really dead fish handshake. So I'm going to go real fast because I'm out of time. But so here's the point, is you feel how uncomfortable that is? How many of you thought, oh, they probably hurt their hand? Nobody. What we tend to do is think, next, this is not the person I want to bring on board, it's not the person I want to hire. So we do things that cause people to be excluded And it's unintentional when we're doing that, but it's because of the biases that we have. And even when we're trying to make friends, we sometimes open mouth and insert foot by asking these types of things. So what then can we do? I have an acronym for you, or a numeric, for you to remember that you can apply immediately, as in like right now. B stands for breathe. Slow down. Take in the oxygen to feed your brain so that you can be more logical in your thinking. B is be the other. Be willing to be the person who's different. So at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings is the most segregated time among Christians. Go to a different place of worship if that's what you do on Sundays. Or if it's on Fridays or Saturdays, go someplace else. Be different. Ask for feedback. Be willing to hear. S is suspend your judgment. I is invite others. Next time you have a house party, invite people other than the ordinary ones you already invite. And then C is check your ego at the door. So I have some resources for you. If you want that will help you do any of those things, you just go to ubuntuglobal.com/client resources. I'll be around so I can tell you that again. And then lastly, and this point has been made already, so I won't make it a whole lot now, is it really takes the whole village to make this work, not just one person within the organization. Thank you.